Okay, this week we're just going to look at a simple kind of collectibles process for our game Tokoi, and implementing that with also a simple sort of UI for our score system. So what we want to look at is something similar to this sort of setup. So I got a game and it's my super simple level, and Tokoi kind of zoom along here, and I've got a Mario sort of style collection box. Now this could be any kind of collectible, so it can jump, bash into that. And as I say, it could be any kind of collectible, and I just bashed into that again as I came down because it's a hitbox all the way around it, and I can collect a number of these. So there's two, and it's kind of an infinite hitbox there, an infinite box. And we also want it to be able to then, as I die, reset our coin. And also for our UI, for our coins to be able to travel along with me as I play. So we jump and still our coins, our UI travels along with us like so. So that's basically what we're going to cover today. Okay, so to kick off, first thing we really want to be able to implement is a canvas and a score system. Now, I've already done some of this stuff, so let me just zoom out a little bit here. There we go. We can see what we're doing here. So I've already done this, so I'm just going to talk you through. And you will have done this previously when we worked on the Pong game. So it's similar to that kind of process. So what you want to do is actually create a canvas by going up to the game object, UI, and you can straight off create a text item. And that will create a canvas and a text and an event system. So what you want to do is just rename your score, your text item, rename it to be score. So it's something like that. What you will find is that your canvas is really large. Because we've rescaled all of our items, so all of our here like lava, etc., we've scaled this, our canvas will be super large. So what you need to do is come across and actually scale your canvas. Here I've scaled it down across the X and Y to 0.1 for the X and Y. So this will zoom this down. So if I leave this 1, which is a normal scaling, you see it's super big. So if I just kind of try and zoom that out, you can see how big it is. So I just need to undo this, undo that. So yeah, it's really big. So you need to just scale that so that it is a reasonable size. And we can do that by just scaling it back to 0.1. So it's a sort of tenth of the actual size. Similarly, you need to do that for your score. Now I've got a bit of a random value here because I've been scaling it using the scaler here. But you can set something more sort of reasonable. But similarly, you need to scale that down, and 0.1 would be a fine value to do that. So for your canvas as well, set it to be world space. It just makes it easier to work with. So set it world space. Don't need to follow a camera. We're not going to be doing that for this because of some slight issues that you might find. So world space, and then for your score, what you want to do is actually move it so that it's on top of your character. So it will follow them directly on top. We'll talk about why we want that to be in that way in a second. Similarly, change the size of it. So find a good size. You don't want it just to be sort of 1, it'd be really small, or 10. Find a good size for it. It's going to work with the scaling of your game. So I find 30 to be pretty good. We haven't got a font for this one like we did with Pong, so just use the default font for that. So then you should have something that looks kind of like this. But what you will find is that it will stay statically. So we want it to move along with our character. So if I just turn off score counter there, just show you, I think it should work. That if I move, score just stays as it is. Now that's no good. We want it to be dynamically move with our camera. Now what you can do is just drag and drop this as a child of Tokoi and do this, and it follows it along. But you see that we have a problem that our canvas moves because we're shifting our animation. The canvas moves with our transformation back and forth, and that looks really quite strange. So let me get rid of that, and we should be back to where we were. Just check. Turn it back on. So what we need to do is use a script to help us to achieve a few things with our score. One of those things is to make sure that it can actually be placed where we want it to be placed, and also can record our score. So records our collection of items. Now they can be coins or actually within the design document we're saying we're collecting items for our ship. So we need to be able to do that. So we need to create a new script, and this is score counter. So we need to be able to collect that, create that. So to do this, first off you need to create a score counter script. And that's in the usual way. So we can right click on our scripts, go create, C# script. Also we can do this by clicking on our score, because that's where it's going to be. We can add a component and we go to new script, name it and place it in there as well. So we can also do that. As I say, I've already done this. So I'm going to go into Mono Develop and just show you what I've done. Okay, so this is our score counter script. There's quite a lot of things going on here, so I'm going to go through it quite slowly, but it's very reminiscent of what we did in Pong as well. So a couple of things to go through from the top. We have a few public variables we're going to use because we need to pass in some things that are going to relate to other items in our game. So we have text because we want to update the actual text on the screen. That's cool, so we need to add that. We have a score value as well, so we need to look at those. We need to know where the player is. Now this is so that we can move this our value, our text around based upon where our player is. So we need to have that. We also need to then have a couple of private variables. One is a vector2. Now we're using this as a transform, so how we move our score around, so that's our score position. Then we also have an integer. Now this is the distance that the score position is going to be away from our player, so how far away it's going to be. And this is in only one direction, so I'm just going to do it in the Y direction from our player. So when we use the start, we're actually going to set our score to 0 in the first instance because we've got no score. It's the beginning of the level, nothing's happening. And then we're using this method to update our score text. So set it to nothing, essentially. That's all good. So we'll come back to this a little bit. So the first thing that we want to look at is in the update. Now remember that the update is called once every frame. So for 60 frames per second, this would be called 60 times. Once per frame. So once per frame, yeah. So what we have here, I'm going to put some comments in here. So first off, we want to set the position of the score based on the player's position. So what we do is get the player's position based on its transform in the X and Y, and then we add the distance that we want the score to be away from our player. So every time the player moves, we'll set the score position but slightly further up the screen from the player. Then let's say get rather than set the position, get the position of that. Then we want to set the score position like so, and also in this we are going to update our score. Using this means the actual transform of the text, the score value that we're placing this on. So if we ignore this part for the second, just focus on this, what this will do, so if we save that, if we take our score, let that catch up, on our actual score, remembering how to apply it, you add a component, remember, and you can look for score counter and add that. So I've already done that here. It will look for a score text. So even though we've added it to our score here, even though I've added it here, it will need our score text to be added. So what you need to do, and actually I'm going to do this, I'm going to remove this component and I'm going to go through this. So I've clicked on score, I can add our score counter like so. You see it is lacking the score text. So I then need to drag, oddly enough, score text on top of it. So it has text related to that. I then also need to add a player to it, because these are public values. So I add a player to that. And what that will allow us to do is for that movement of the score to be above our player. Now if we change, move that away, this value to a smaller value, say 3, save that, come back in here, see it starts here, our score text starts here, started off, let it catch up. You see it's slightly lower down here. Now you might be asking where does coins come from? If we look in our score update, which is what we're using here as a method, we say score.text, score text.text. So this is our text here. So it's just getting text. So in our public text that we've passed in, so it's actually grabbing the text value of our UI. And you'll see actually that score text has a number of different values that you can use, alignment, color, so we can change the color if we wanted to as we updated it, the font size, etc. Lots of things in that UI. So the text we change to coins and then the score value, so whatever that score value is. Now we can alter the score here by updating it. Now this is going to be called by a different script or a different method in the script. But what we're going to do is create a public. So we want these to be public. This is fine. This doesn't need to be public because we're not going to call it from outside of this script. So this can be just update as it normally is. This one we're going to call within this script. So this doesn't need to be public. This one and this one need to be public because we're going to call them outside of this particular script. So here, what we're going to do is go update score value, pass in an integer because we want to know how much, so we can vary it. Might be 1, might be 2, depending upon the sort of item that we're collecting. Add to the score, so we're always incrementing it, always updating it, and update the score text. So then we'll be calling this and updating the score text. Now we might say if we were to die or hit something that removes all our score, we might want to reset the score to 0. So we call reset score and it removes all of the score, so moving it back down to 0. So that's our overall score element. Now what we need to do is create a box on some kind of collectible. It doesn't have to be with a box, but we'll take some kind of collectible.